My name is Ólöf Einarsdóttir, and I'm a faculty in chemistry and biochemistry department here at UCSC. I am from Iceland originally, and I come from a big family of 11 siblings, 8 sisters and 3 brothers. My mother finished high school. She started law school but did not continue. My father also graduated from high school, but he started a business when he was very young and did not attend college. So I'm a first generation. What motivated me to pursue science? Well, there was a big emphasis on education in my family. It was always assumed that all of us, both boys and girls, would pursue higher education. And all of us siblings have actually done so. My father initially encouraged me to go into medical school, which I did for 1 semester, but I realized that being a doctor was not for me, so I switched and decided to pursue chemistry. And the reason I pursued chemistry is because I had a really good chemistry teacher in high school, my first semester. Also, chemistry was mathematical, and I really liked math. And third is that I was very intrigued by biochemistry and the role that biomolecules play in our lives. So I finished my bachelor's degree in science in chemistry at the University of Iceland. And then I could not pursue a higher degree in Iceland, so I decided to go abroad. First, I decided to go for a master's degree, and the reason for that was that in my mind, PhD was this grand thing, and I wasn't sure that I had what it took to actually pursue a PhD degree. So in other words, I lacked self-confidence, despite having a lot of support from my family. Anyway, I went to Colorado State University, Fort Collins, and I realized fairly quickly after I got there that when I compared myself with other students that I had what it took to pursue a PhD degree. And so I got my PhD degree in biochemistry and finished my dissertation in 1986. I then went on to Los Alamos National Laboratory for 3 years as a postdoctoral associate. And then in 1989, I became an assistant professor at UCSC in the chemistry and biochemistry department. At the time I was hired as an assistant professor, I was the only woman in a faculty of 17 males. And in 1995, I was the first woman to get tenure in a chemistry department. And then in 2006, I was the first woman to become a chair of my department. So, so now, after having been here at UCSC for close to, 26 years, we're 22 professors, 23 professors in my department, and we have 4 women. We are doing better, but I think there is room for improvement. So my research, my research focuses on respiration and actually how our cells use oxygen. And more specifically, my research has focused on an enzyme called a cytochrome oxidase that reacts with oxygen that we breathe to make energy for life's processes. And cytochrome oxidase is one of several enzymes in this so-called respiratory chain that is situated in small organelles in your body called mitochondria. And mitochondria, they produce most of the energy that is needed for living cells or living processes. So these enzymes, they harness the energy that are in food, such as sugars. They break down the sugars in a series of steps, and as a result of these reactions, we have release of charged particle, electrons. And the cytochrome oxidase reacts with the electrons and converts oxygen to water. And it does this extremely efficiently at about turning over about or producing about 1,000 molecules of water per second. So that's really amazing. So at the same time, the enzyme also pumps hydrogen ions or protons across a mitochondrial membrane from inside to outside. It's kind of like charging up a battery in a car. And this gradient, if you want, across the membrane is then used by another enzyme in this chain of respiratory enzymes to make ATP, which is the ultimate energy molecules that you and I use for everything. For example, flexing a muscle or sending electrical signals along a nerve or maintaining the warm and constant body temperature, to give you some examples. In my lab, specifically, we monitor or explore the individual steps that occur when the cytochrome oxidase converts oxygen to water. So we use actually lasers to zap the enzyme to start the reaction between the enzyme and oxygen, and then we monitor how fast electrons go between the metal centers in the enzyme. And we have done this in different organisms, such as humans, in cows, and in bacteria. Some of it actually live at fairly high temperatures. So the instrumentations in my laboratories allows us to take a snapshot, if you want, of the reaction as the oxygen is being converted to water. And we can do this on time scales from about 10 billionth of a second to about 1/10 of a second. So we're taking snapshot of actually what is happening, and we are comparing that between cytochrome oxidase in different organisms. Also, when oxygen is being converted to water, you can actually produce what are called oxygen radicals. And these radicals, if they escape the enzyme, they can damage the cell. So one of the questions, sort of more physiological question, is how does the enzyme actually prevent, or the metal center in the enzyme, how do they prevent the radicals from escaping? So that's a very important question, a very exciting question. And it may actually, these radicals may actually have a role in aging and in disease. Also, on a more global scale, I've told you that the mitochondria produce most of the energy. So it would be really great if we could actually make an artificial system that was as efficient as a mitochondria, so we could harvest large amount of energy. But in order to do that, we really have to understand how the enzyme is working. And so that's one of the reasons why we're focusing on this enzyme. So what I've really enjoyed doing research. I've really enjoyed interacting with students, and I've found that the best way to mentor students is to engage them in the activities that we do, in my case, research and teaching. I love having undergraduates and graduate students in my laboratory, and I've also mentored students that have come from California colleges during the summers, underrepresented students, and it's very gratifying to see them give a talk at the end of the summer, both produce a poster and give a talk. Also, it's a big thrill to see undergraduates and graduate students who you have mentored in your laboratory and who have either written an undergraduate thesis or finished their doctorate in your laboratory go on to mature academically and start on their own scientific journey. And it's gratifying for me to know that you have perhaps played a small role in launching their careers. Outside work, I like singing. I'm in a choir, a gospel and folk choir. I also like reading, and I like hiking. And of course, Santa Cruz is a beautiful area to do that. What advice would I give women who want to be scientists? I would tell them to be resilient. I would tell them to believe in themselves. I mentioned before, when I first started off in my career, I was afraid to go for a PhD because I didn't think I could do it. I think, looking back on my career, wondering why I lacked confidence, despite being really having a lot of support from my family, I think is because of societal expectation of women versus men. But also, when I think about it, it was probably lack of role models, women role models in my career. I hadn't really thought about this until very, very recently. But when I went through my undergraduate career in Iceland, I did not take a single class from a woman. There was no women on the faculty in Iceland. And when I got my PhD in biochemistry from Colorado State, again, I did not take a single class from a woman, and there were no women on the faculty in that department either. So don't let that deter you. I would say you will have doubts, and you might have fears. That's normal. And I would say challenge yourself to overcome your fear. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You are not alone. It may be a difficult journey, but ask your scientific colleagues when you have questions. I found that to be very, very helpful. And believe in yourself, and I think you will succeed.